throughout the year and throughout the national territory.
Imagine waking up at 4 a.m. You break your back under the scorching sun of the Sahel. You sow every seed. You water every plant. But when the harvest comes, the fruit does not belong to you. And what is more painful, even the ground beneath your feet does not belong to you. For over a century, this has been the brutal reality for millions in Burkina Faso. They are strangers, tenants on the very land of their ancestors. They call Africa a rich continent, but who owns that wealth? The answer lies in land deeds locked away in safes in Paris, London, or New York. Through so-called agricultural investments, millions of hectares of the most fertile soil have been fenced off. The rule of the game was simple. He who has gold makes the rules. He who owns the land holds the power of life and death. But history is sometimes rewritten by a single signature. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has just done something that made the global elite, from Wall Street to multinational corporations, shiver in fear. No guns, no bloodshed, but the impact is more powerful than a nuclear bomb. He declared, "Land is not a commodity for speculation. Land is the blood and flesh of the nation." With his latest decree, Traoré has abolished permanent land ownership for foreign entities. He is taking the soil back from the super-rich and returning it to hands calloused by labor. The world calls this madness. Traoré calls it a homecoming. Welcome to the story of the boldest revolution of the 21st century, the land revolution. To understand why this decision is sending shockwaves through the West, we must travel back in time. We must understand the historical scam. When the colonizers left, they granted political independence, but they left behind an economic trap: Western land law. Under this law, land is an asset that can be freely bought and sold. This sounds fair on paper, but in reality, it created a mechanism of the big fish eating the small fish. Foreign corporations, with bottomless pockets, easily bought the best lands for pennies, pushing locals into the desert. This is neocolonialism. They don't need to send armies to invade. They only need to bring contracts and buy your country, 1 square meter at a time. Before Traoré took power, land speculation in Burkina Faso had reached a crisis point. Real estate tycoons and shell companies hoarded land just to let it sit there, waiting for the price to rise. Meanwhile, farmers had no soil to grow food to feed their families. Traoré saw the root cause of poverty. He said, "We are not poor because we lack resources. We are poor because we are forbidden from touching our own resources." This land reform is not a populist political trick. It is emergency surgery to save the life of the nation. If the land is not returned to the people, Burkina Faso will forever be a beggar nation, surviving on food aid from the very people who stole their land. Part 3. The mechanism of revolution. Music, modern industrial, pulse, explanatory. So, how did Traoré change the rules of the game? Let's dive into the technical details of this decree. First, the abolition of permanent ownership for foreigners. From now on, international investors can only lease land through time-limited contracts, 20 years, 30 years. Second, and most importantly, the principle of use it or lose it. If you are granted land but leave it abandoned past the deadline, the state will confiscate it without compensation. This is a fatal blow to speculators. Before, land was a savings account. Now, land is a hot coal. If you don't cultivate it, you lose everything. This forces capital to shift from real estate speculation to real production. You want to keep the land? Build a factory. Plant rice. Create jobs. If not, step aside for someone who will. Furthermore, Traoré is building a transparent management system. In the past, land allocation was a playground for corruption. Now, the process is public. Who is the number one priority? The producers. The tillers shall have their fields. It is an old slogan, but in Burkina Faso in 2025, it is finally becoming reality. But dry policies cannot capture the soul of this revolution. Look at the people. First, the women. In Africa, women are the backbone of agriculture. They produce 70% of the food, yet they own less than 10% of the land. They work on their husband's land, their father's land, or the landlord's land. Traoré's decree specifically prioritizes land for women's cooperatives. For the first time in history, mothers and sisters have autonomy. They no longer fear being evicted when a husband passes away. Next is the youth. In the past, young people fled villages for the cities to drive motorcycle taxis, or risked death crossing the sea to Europe, because there was no land at home. Traoré asks, why go be a slave in a foreign land, when our own soil is waiting for you? The government is not just giving land. They are providing seeds and technology. A generation of agripreneurs is rising. They are turning dead zones into solar farms and export orchards. And finally, the most humane act, resettling the war refugees. Millions lost their homes to terrorism. Instead of leaving them to rot in camps, the government gives them land in safe zones. To give them land is to give them dignity. It is to give them a reason to restart their lives. This is not just economics. This is healing the wounds of war. But do not be mistaken. Traoré does not want Burkina Faso to remain a backward agricultural nation forever. Land is the launchpad for industrialization. His strategy is clear. Grow local, process local. Why export raw cotton to Asia, only to buy back t-shirts at 10 times the price? Traoré wants textile factories rising right next to the cotton fields. When factories are built on the people's land, the value stays within the country. Jobs are created for thousands of engineers and workers. This is the only way to escape poverty sustainably. Traoré is shifting the economy from resource extraction to resource processing. Many compare Traoré to the legendary Thomas Sankara. Both shared the same dream: food sovereignty. Sankara once said, "He who feeds you, controls you." By nationalizing the land, Traoré is cutting the noose of foreign food dependence. Naturally, this move is keeping the West awake at night. Not because they care about Burkina Faso, but because they fear the domino effect. If Traoré's model succeeds, what happens next? Mali, Niger, even giants like Nigeria or South Africa? Land is Africa's greatest asset. If Africa takes back control of its land, the global economic order turns upside down. The source of cheap raw materials for Western factories will end. Sanctions have been threatened, credit ratings downgraded. But this time, the threats fall on deaf ears. Because when people have land, they have food. When they have food and belief, they fear no embargo. Traoré has armed his people with a weapon stronger than guns: autonomy. and a self-sufficient nation is an unconquerable nation. In the end, the story of land is not just about politics or money. It is a story about dignity. Traoré has returned to the people of Burkina Faso the most basic human right. The right to own the place where you were born. The right to sow a seed and know that you will be the one to harvest it. He has proven that poverty is not destiny. Poverty is the result of injustice. And when justice is served, prosperity will sprout from the earth. The world is changing, starting from the dry lands of West Africa. Ibrahim Traoré has lit the torch, and the whole continent is watching. What do you think about this bold revolution? Will the world let Traoré fulfill his dream? Share your thoughts below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to spread these inspiring stories of the Global South rising. Goodbye, and see you in the next chapter of history.